Okay, before we talk about CSS, just a quick note that on the previous video, the add more actually didn't work. It just looked like it was working because I still had the old jokes array in here. So it was something like this, which obviously doesn't exist. Okay, so this should actually add the joke. So let's look at CSS. Before we change the code, CSS, for me at least, changed quite a lot since I looked at it the first time. And I think where it's at now, the need for a preprocessor like SAS or less is less likely that you're going to need it. I think most of the things that you want with CSS can be done in CSS. One of the big things for me was discovering Flexbox, and there's another one, Grid, which deals with layouts. This is quite a good guide. I think it's been around for a while, it's just new for me, so you might think, wow. But anyway, so I think the need for, like previously we had these frameworks that did this 12 or 16 grid layouts. I don't think we need that anymore because the combination of grid and this is enough to do layout. So the whole layout of the Dev UI is done with a combination of these. So this display flex is allowing you to do all sorts of things. So what we want to do in our button here, so let's just look at our buttons. So we have this button bar. So up here we can reference button bar. I'm actually just going to cut and paste. Right. Okay, so we'll do display flex, which is what I've shown you now, and then as you read here what you can set with display flex, there's all sorts of things you can do. What we use is this justify content, so we're going to use this one, space between, so it'll push the two buttons to the two sides with a space between them, and we'll put a gap in of 10 pixels. We'll align the item center, and we'll make the width 90%, and then the buttons itself we'll make big because we want to fill the space. Because of that, we can also probably change this more text to something like tell me more jokes. So let's see how that looks like. Okay, let's see how that looks like. And now the buttons are big and at the bottom stretched out. Another thing that's quite useful, which I'm sure all of you know, is that you can obviously use this debugger to see what's on the screen and see the layout. So if it is a flex box, you'll see. You'll also here see how lit, or rather web components, work. So you'll see, for instance, in our component, so if you follow the structure of the web page, we have the header, the middle part, and the footer. So this is what the framework gives you. The middle part is made up of the menu and the page, and the page is where the extension takes part in. And the page also will always be part of the router, so we'll get to the router at some point, I think. But by default the page will be registered in the router, which gives you the ability to change this URL without refreshing the page, but it helps for bookmarking and history and so on. So here's our component inside the page, and then you'll see that we open this shadow root, our component, so anything in this part here wouldn't affect anything outside of it. So our styling in here, if we look at okay, so we added the button bar, and here's our styling, right? And now it's easy to actually test what you know, what happens if we change the gap. So you can see the gap there changes there if you look there. Yeah, so this is quite useful if you start moving things around, to actually just play here first, because you can also add things here, so whatever. Right, and then you just copy it from here into your lid component. Okay.